Wilt thou, Silvius?
So the final stage, after doing all this, is to say it without the actions, and before saying anything, I'll just let you do it, and then we can discuss how it changes it.
There be some women, Silvius, had they marked him in parcels as I did, would have gone near to fall in love with him. Yet for my part, I love him not, nor hate him not. And yet I have more cause to hate him than to love him. For what had he to do to chide at me? He said mine eyes were black, and my hair black, and now I remembered scorned at me. I marvel why I answered not again. But that's all one. Omittance is no quittance. I'll write to him a very taunting letter, and thou shalt bear it, wilt thou, Silvius?
So yeah, the purpose of that exercise is to enhance the understanding of the character by identifying like the pace and the flow of the piece. It's important to note that actually you can't really do that effort exercise without having done the thought process one that we demonstrated earlier, because you need to be able to distinguish where the different thought processes are in order to put the right effort the right effort in the right place. So, Myra, how did you find directing that?
It was quite difficult. We definitely couldn't have done it without the thought processes that we've done the previous week, because it's very, without chopping up the lines almost to different thought processes, it would have been near impossible for me to say what, a specific action. But then I also found that those specific actions were actually quite restrictive in some ways. It's like you couldn't, if you felt that it was a certain way, you have to go back to the list and say, oh, that's not on the list, we can't use that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see why, as a director, you would use it, especially, I would never do it for the whole script, but especially if there was a part that maybe the actor was struggling with understanding and characterisation or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or if it was quite a sounds bad, but a boring bit of script,
Yeah.
just to changing it up or something like that, it does give it a little bit more life.
Yeah. Did it help you as an actor, Alice, to kind of get more into character?
Because you kind of understand what she's talking about more, and her feelings behind. Because Phoebe in this thing, she changes her mind all the time, and she's got all these different thoughts going on in her head that kind of contradict what she's saying to Silvius. So it's kind of good in that way because she's got these little thoughts that keep coming in, so you can change the kind of feeling of it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Did you, as an audience, notice any difference in the second time Alice performed her monologue? Yeah. Did you? Did you think that exercise helped her performance? Yeah. Do you think there are do you think there are any limitations in that exercise at all?
I guess if you get stuck on a certain word, it can kind of trip you up.
Cool.
Right, following on from the whole idea of kind of looking at the monologue like the kind of emotions and how you say the actual words, we're looking at doing a monologue, not using actual words, but using gobbledygook, or gobbledygooch as Demi likes to refer to it. So, Joe, can I ask you to say the first couple of lines of your monologue, just Okay.
Like it, you're like a sexual maniac. Only with you, it's food. You'll end up in the news of the world, boyo. You wait.
Okay, now can I ask you just to speak some gobbledygook? Doesn't need to make sense, just say it.
Skidder tiddly tiddly bing bang one bing tiddly.
Okay, now I need you to, using gobbledygook, replace the words in your monologue with just the first things that come into your head. But try and act it as you would say the words normally. So look for the emotion beneath it.
Skeleton. Here is skeleton. You're the bad bit.
words or the meaning of the actual monologue, but it still kind of made sense, right? Like, obviously we didn't know exactly what he was talking about, but a kind of general feeling that he had when he was saying it. Right. So how did it feel? Was it easy, difficult?
I can see how it would work, but when you're in front of, like, for example, a whole lecture room, it's like they're laughing at you speaking nonsense, and you're not concentrating on the emotions behind the monologue, even though you're not using words, which is actually quite useful if you were to do it on your own, when there's no like strain of being laughed at. Or
Yeah.
I would do it in front of a mirror though, because you'd probably make yourself laugh as well. So it's probably best. I think that exercise is great if you're just on your own and you can let loose with the emotions.
When we tried out this exercise, we realised that words aren't necessarily the most important things in monologues, but instead the way you portray them and your tone and your gestures that you use with it. Some of us found this exercise quite difficult because not only are you speaking absolute rubbish, but you couldn't rely on the words and had to express yourself solely on the tone.
It's hard to actually speak gobbledygook because you end up just using one syllable
You're
all the time.
focusing too much on what you're not saying.
Yeah.
And you have to...
And you shouldn't worry about that, you should just worry about what you mean, even though you're speaking rubbish.
Thanks.
Cheers.
So, human connection is the essence of good theatre. This was Peter Brook's belief. He felt that in order to create a piece of good theatre, the audience must feel every emotion that the actor is feeling. And it was through the use of defamiliarisation that this was possible. The exercises that we've demonstrated tonight are techniques used by Brooke and Jo Littlewood. And Brooke in particular felt that the theatre had become outdated and the meaning lost. Therefore, defamiliarisation allows us to find the truth within the performance again. By breaking these monologues down, we've been able to look at the sound effects, levels of tension, and gobbledygook. We are able to find the essence of the piece, which could have otherwise been lost. Once the essence has been established, then the performance can then be reconstructed with a clearer and deeper meaning. If the actor finds this meaning and delivers it with clarity, then they have successfully managed to engage their audience. Now, we found with the exercises that some of them were a lot more relatable, I guess, and like we preferred some of them, we didn't prefer other ones, and it was like a process of all the techniques and stuff that we can take on to other different monologues or different sections of performance, but some of them we couldn't. So we found it really interesting to see how his techniques, some of them they did really work well, some of them not so much, but we could also see how, for example, they were saying earlier about how the breaking up the syllables and stuff and looking at how the sound effects then went on, it actually helped us to figure out how to get into the floating and all of that stuff. So it actually helped us layer up these monologues, which we hadn't been told to learn them, we'd just been told to find one. And I just wanted to end with this quote from one of his books, which I thought was quite interesting. So it's, "Truth in theatre is always on the move. As you read this book, it is already moving out of date. It is for me an exercise now frozen on the page. But unlike a book, the theatre has one special characteristic. It is always possible to start again. In life, this is myth. We ourselves can never go back on anything. New leaves never turn, clocks never go back. We can never have a second chance. In the theatre, the slate is wiped clean all the time. In everyday life, if is a fiction. In the theatre, if is an experiment. In everyday life, if is an invasion. In the theatre, if is the truth. When we are persuaded to believe in this truth, then the theatre and life are one. This is a high aim. It sounds like hard work. To play needs much work. But when we experience the work as play, then it is not work anymore. A play is play." Any questions?